friends. Catchy title, huh? The kissing technique, 3 ways. But it's all to do with stamping and a really fun technique. This is not a new technique by any means, but as I always like to say, I know that there are new stampers watching my channel, so that this could be very much a new technique for you. And those who have been stamping for a while, you may not have seen this technique, or maybe one that you have forgotten. Either way, it's a super fun technique. It's a great way to use our stamps together. So I'm going to show you 3 ways to create the kissing technique that you can use for your cards, your scrapbooks, backgrounds for your paper crafting projects. So I'm going to show you the technique, and then I'm going to show you the different ways you can use the technique, and I will also show you my finished projects using what I'm sharing with you today. So you ready? Let's get stamping. So for the majority of the cards, I'm going to be using our lovely lily pad stamp set, and this of course is free right now during our Stampin' Up! Celebration promotion, which ends March 31st, 2020. And in this set, we have a solid image and the outline image. So I'm going to be using this solid image right here, and I've already got it on my block. And if you just flip it over, it's reversible, and then you've got your line art, the detail. So I'm just going to put that back on there. You want to use a nice flat bold surface for this technique. Now I'm bringing in a piece of Whisper White cardstock. This measures 11 by 8.5, and I'm going to stamp all my flowers on here with the different kissing techniques, and then I will show you the cards that I make with them afterwards. Kissing usually requires 2 people, right? Well, it also requires 2 stamps. So I'm going to use this stamp right here from the Beautiful Friendship. Now I'm just inking this with my Flirty Flamingo ink pad. And for this one, I'm going to use my Petal Pink ink pad. And then you simply kiss the 2 together. That's the kissing technique. So this has just picked up the pattern of that flower. So I'm just going to go ahead and stamp it down. And you can see I've got the 2 colors and the pattern in there, which is super cool. So I'm going to do that again, but with different colors and stamps. So I've gone ahead and cleaned this. Now I'm bringing in my Soul Saffron, inking up that bold image. Now I've got my Mango Medley ink pad, and this time I'm using one of our big background stamps. This is our Birch stamp. So I don't need the whole stamp inked, obviously, because the stamp is smaller that's going to be kissing this. So I'm just going to go ahead and push down and stamp on my paper. And you can see it's pulling out that image. So I have a feeling you're probably getting the idea of all the different ways you can use this kissing technique. So I've gone ahead, I've cleaned this. So this is the first way to use the kissing technique, but I want to show you some different ways of how you can use different stamps with your bold images. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with a different stamp set and different colors. This time I'm using the flower from Positive Thoughts. It's so interesting how the different images work together, and it's so pretty. So for this one, I'm going to use Gorgeous Grape and Highland Heather. So you want to have a lighter color on the bold image, and then a darker color on the second image that is going to be kissing the first one. In that case, it is our flower. So I've got that inked up, and I'm just going to go ahead and kiss the 2 of them together and stamp. Can you see that? And I'm still going to be stamping the outline of this lily on top, but you get such a pretty effect inside that first kissed image. Okay, I am pulling in our Buffalo Check stamp now, which is another one of our big background stamps. And I am going to use Lovely Lipstick, and I'm just going to ink up in the center. And I've cleaned this stamp, and I'm going to bring my Petal Pink back in. Ink that up. And kiss. And stamp. So cool. And I'm going to show you something else you can do. You can actually get another stamped image after you've stamped the initial one. Just, not over top of your paper, but just lightly mist with water. And stamp down and hold it in place just for a second. And you're going to get a really pretty look. See? So it's a lot softer and it's got that little bit of that wash to it. Now while I still have ink on my buffalo check background, I'm going to pull in Love What You Do stamp set and use this solid image. So this will just give you another idea of how you can use so many different stamps with this. Bring in the petal pink and ink that up. And kiss and stamp. And again, without cleaning that, I'm just going to give it a light mist of water and stamp it down. So these make really fun little background pieces. And these are going to coordinate with the flowers that I'm stamping as well. So that is how you stamp using the kissing technique with 2 stamps and some inks. But how about adding some heat embossing? So I'm just inking this stamp up with Grapefruit Grove now. And I'm bringing the birch stamp back in. And instead of using color on the stamp that's going to be kissing the first one, I'm using my Versamark. So I've inked that up, and then I'm stamping my image, kissing my image I should say. So they're kissing, and then I'm going to stamp it down here. So that's one way to get a look because the Versamark actually takes off the ink that's on there before. I clean the stamp every time before I do this technique. I'm going to bring the Grapefruit Grove back in. Clean this one as well. Bring in my Versamark. And kiss. And stamp. Now this time, instead of leaving it like that, I am going to actually sprinkle on embossing powder. So the dye ink, the Grapefruit Grove is a dye ink, so that's going to dry pretty quick, whereas the Versamark is a water stamp ink pad, so that's not going to dry as fast. And I think these little swirly marks are because there was a little bit of water on the stamp, and that's okay. So I've just given that just a couple of minutes to dry. I don't want embossing powder on that one because I want to kind of keep that as it is. So I am going to sprinkle on some gold embossing powder. You can tell I didn't use the embossing buddy on here, so I've got powder where I don't want it. That's okay. I'm just going to take my paintbrush and brush off that excess. Now I'm going to set that with the heat tool. And now I've got some pretty gold heat embossing on that piece. All right, there's more we can do with the kissing technique. This is the third way that I'm going to demonstrate on how you can use the kissing technique. And this time I'm pulling in one of our embossing folders. So this one is the swirls and curls. So I'm just going to move my paper aside. Now you want to ink up the side that is raised. So this is the raised side over here. And I'm going to use Coastal Cabana and just ink that up. And I'm going to bring in my pool party and I'm going to stamp the solid image with the pool party. And kiss the embossing folder. So can you see how that has picked up the design and the ink from the embossing folder? So let's go ahead and stamp that. So cool. So cool. And of course you could use the Versamark on here just like we did on this one so that you can emboss that design too. So many possibilities. Now I don't want to waste this ink, So I always have Whisper White cut on my desk so that I can create backgrounds. So I'm going to mist this with water, and I'm going to lay this on top. Just give it a little rub. And now I have this piece for a background. So that's a great way to stretch out our projects. And there's still ink on here. I could still get more cards out of this. But let's just set that aside. So let's just kind of recap what we've got here. This one's Petal Pink, and then this image is done with Melon Mambo. This one was first stamped with So Saffron, and then I used Mango Medley on the birch and stamped it on top. This one, the base layer is Highland Heather, and then we stamped the flower from the Positive Thoughts using Gorgeous Grape on top. And then this one is Petal Pink on the solid image and Lovely Lipstick with the buffalo check kissed onto the flower for that right there. And let's not forget, I also stamped the solid image from Love What You Do with that buffalo check to create these two. That one misted with a bit of water. Then I also misted the flower with the water. This one has the Grapefruit Grove on the background, and then I inked up the birch stamp with Versamark, and then that lifted up some of the ink so that you get that pretty background. I did the same thing here, but this time I embossed it with gold embossing powder. And then this one, the solid background was Pool Party, and I put Bermuda Bay on the Swirls and Curls embossing folder to get that. So let's flip this stamp over and add some detail to these flowers. So I'm going to stamp these with my Memento ink pad. Now this stamp set was not designed so that this lines up perfectly with the detailed image. So what I do is I line up the 3 top petals with the solid image here, and it makes it really easy for lining up. And look at what a difference it makes when you add that detailed image and you get the 2 colors and the pattern from the kissing technique behind it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the remaining flowers. Okay, you'll notice I didn't stamp on this one because I'm actually going to use gold embossing powder for the outline on this. But I really hope you can see all those gorgeous patterns coming through that detailed image stamp. Okay, I've cleaned my stamp, and now I'm bringing in my embossing buddy, and this time I'm gonna swipe over the entire paper so that I don't get embossing powder where I don't want it. Okay, bring in my Versamark, ink that up, and line it up just like I did for the other ones. Bring in my gold powder. Okay, I'm going to set that with the heat tool again. And now I've got the gold outline of the flower with that gold pattern sweeping across. You'd never know it was the birch stamp, but it looks so pretty. So I've already stamped the same flowers with the same colors and designs earlier today and cut them with the coordinating die. So I'm going to show you the finished cards. Here is my first card. And this one was created using these 2 flowers right here. And I recently did a video demonstrating the baby wipe technique, and I swiped it across paper, so I had that left over. So that's what this background is. And then the happy birthday is from the perennial birthday stamp set. And I just added a few pearls just to add a little dimension to the card. Using the same flowers, here's another card, and I used the sentiments from our Sending You Thoughts Celebration stamp set. Now these cards were left over from classes and events, so this was just a great way of recycling those bits and pieces. And I just added a little bit of our Mossy Meadow twine, and I raised these on Stampin' Dimensionals, and then some pressed petals Designer Series paper. So here's the next card. I think it turned out really nice. This one is using these two flowers right here. So this is with the embossing folder, and this one was with the flower kissed onto the Highland Heather. And again, just using the sentiments from Sending You Thoughts stamp set, a little silver glimmer paper, some Perennial Essence Designer Series paper, and it's on a Highland Heather card base, so of course everything coordinates really, really nice. I added a little bit of ribbon and I spritzed it with some of our champagne shimmer mist, so it has a really pretty shimmer to it. Next, I'm going to show you the card I made using the buffalo check image, and here it is here. And remember, I showed you how you could use the image from the Love What You Do stamp set. Well, I did that on a piece of Whisper White, stamped the sentiment on it, and then I used the buffalo check on the background, embossed it in clear, and then after I had my die cut of the flower, I pressed it into the First & Mark ink pad and covered the whole thing with clear embossing powder and heat set it, so I get that shine which pulls in the background as well. This flower here, where I misted the stamp with water after stamping this one, I did the same thing on this card. And again, using that background, just added a bit of ribbon, my sentiments. Here's a card I made using the gold embossed lily. And everything has just been recycled from card classes and things that I had in my scrap bin. So they're pretty simple cards, some of them, but sometimes we need simple, and simple is still very pretty. I mean, look at that gold embossing. And it looks so nice to have that design going across from that birch image. Now for my last card, I'm going to show you also how I used this background. And that is on this card here. So again, I've got the kissing technique with the lily and it's embossed in gold, and I also have a little bit of this background on the tips. So there's a little bit of blue on the tips of the flowers too, just because they were all stamped on the same piece of paper. And then I added some champagne shimmer mist with the paintbrush so that I really get a lot of glimmer and shine. My background is also a piece left over from my baby wipe technique. This is the piece here, and I ran it. Would you believe that these are the two same pieces? You would never know that, but these were exactly the same. But what I did is I ran this through my Bake Shot using the Parisian Flourish embossing folder. And then after I ran it through, I did a light sponging of Crumb Cake and Grapefruit Grove, because I wanted to pull in the Grapefruit Grove that was stamped on the lily. And I also sponged Crumb Cake all around the edges too, and then stamped my sentiment. Now earlier today I did the same technique here, kissing the stamp to the buffalo check image, but I used it in Grapefruit Grove and Cajun Craze, and I created a 6x8 scrapbook page. So here it is here. Let me take that out. So this photo is actually from Canada Day a couple years ago at our friend's home. They live right on the ocean, and beautiful, beautiful sunset. So what I did is I cut it down to 4x4, and I actually stamped the sentiment using StazOn right on top of my photo. This sentiment is from a previous paper pumpkin kit. And then I used scrap bits of Designer Series paper on my Whisper White background. And this is where I will do my journaling. And then I just stacked my two flowers together right on top of that page. And it looks really, really nice. I had so much fun making these cards, and I couldn't wait to share the kissing technique with you. I hope you are inspired and that you're going to give this a try. Go through your stamps. You're going to get so many different ideas with the different images and embossing folders. I just know you're going to have a lot of fun with this technique. Please remember to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and the little bell next to it, and then you're notified every time I upload a new video. Here are a couple more videos you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, and happy stamping!